In this heart-wrenching story, a millionaire husband who had everything, including a beautiful wife, cheats on her and pushes her to the edge. After the betrayal, his wife, heartbroken but strong, decides to leave him and file for divorce. The husband, overwhelmed by regret and realizing the value of the woman he once took for granted, tries desperately to win her back. But despite his wealth and apologies, his wife has already found peace and a new life, moving on from the painful past. She no longer needs him to feel complete and is focused on her personal growth and happiness. The story highlights themes of betrayal, regret, and the empowerment of a woman who finds strength in letting go, illustrating how sometimes the past must be left behind to embrace a brighter future.
Cheating millionaire husband regrets divorce, but his poor wife has already moved on. Bianca Moretti once believed marriage to a self-made millionaire was the ultimate dream, a whirlwind romance steeped in promise and possibility. Armand Fontaine dazzled her with lavish gifts, private jet escapades, and whispered declarations of eternal devotion. Yet beneath the glitz of penthouse parties and black-tie galas, their fairy tale frayed. Armand, obsessed with power and temptation, veered into a reckless affair, discarding the woman who'd stood by him. Only after the ink dried on their divorce did regret strike him like a thunderbolt. But by then, Bianca had discovered her own strength and forged a new destiny without him. What followed would shock them both. Bianca Moretti first met Armand Fontaine at a fund-raising banquet in Milan. She was fresh out of graduate school, guiding VIP guests through an art exhibit featuring talented young sculptors. Armand, then 33, had soared into the public eye after a string of savvy investments in biotech startups. Commanding in his presence, Armand exuded an air of easy confidence that drew all attention in the glittering room. When their paths intersected, his sharp smile, smoldering gaze made her heart skip a beat. Within hours, he coaxed her into a waltz around the expansive ballroom. By night's end, their connection felt electric, as though destiny itself had orchestrated their meeting. Armand lingered in Milan for a week longer than planned, whisking Bianca off on candlelit dinners among the city's canals. She, raised in a modest household with a fiercely supportive mother, found herself dazzled by the extravagance, but more so by Armand's genuine curiosity about her life. He asked about her passion for art history, her quiet desire to one day establish a traveling gallery for emerging artists. In those initial days, he appeared both gentle and solicitous, weaving an impression that he valued her beyond mere arm candy status. Over months, they built a whirlwind romance, bridging continents. Armand introduced her to his business associates in Geneva, then flew her to lavish receptions in Monaco. He seemed unstoppable, riding wave after wave of financial success, capturing headlines for philanthropic donations. Meanwhile, Bianca straddled awe and mild unease at how quickly her life changed. She accepted his proposal before the year ended, a ring with a diamond so large it made her mother gasp. Their wedding in the Tuscan hills was the stuff of fairy tales, pastel blossoms, string quartets, a star-studded guest list. The press dubbed them the unstoppable Fontaine couple, Armand for his unstoppable deal-making, Bianca for her quiet brilliance that anchored him. And for a while, the glow of newlywed life felt perfect. They traveled, hosted charity galas, and spent occasional weekends in the French Riviera. Bianca pressed forward with her dream to promote young artists. With Armand's promise of backing, he spared no expense on their luxurious penthouse in London, replete with custom art pieces adorning every corridor. Still, faint warnings tugged at her mind. Armand's phone buzzed incessantly with messages from unknown contacts. He spent late nights locked in hushed calls. At a Christmas party, she once glimpsed him chatting closely with an elegant woman, Marianne Dubois, rumored to be a financial strategist. He brushed it off as business, Wanting to trust her husband, Bianca quieted her anxieties. She reasoned that a man juggling so many ventures might appear elusive. Unaware of the heartbreak that loomed, she let love overshadow caution. And so, in the breathless excitement of a fairy tale marriage, the seeds of future turmoil lay quietly embedded, waiting for betrayal to unleash them in full force. A year into their marriage, Bianca's life brimmed with charitable receptions and international travel. Armand's wealth flourished even further. He ventured into renewable energy startups, minted alliances with emerging tech moguls, and soared on magazine covers, branding him a modern Renaissance man. Bianca found herself juggling two roles: supportive partner in the public eye and budding advocate for underappreciated artists behind the scenes. Yet subtle signs disturbed her serenity. Armand's schedule grew hectic beyond reason. Months would slip by where they rarely shared an uninterrupted dinner. He hopped from Manhattan boardrooms to Berlin summits, frequently accompanied by colleagues Bianca hardly knew. At social events, she'd discover glimpses of tension, like hushed arguments between him and his CFO, or an unnamed tension in his voice whenever he referenced a certain phone call. She told herself it was mere stress. A man operating so many business fronts had to remain half lost in a haze of deals and deadlines, right? During an art expo in Florence, Bianca received a text from a mutual friend, Cassie Scott, who'd once been her dorm mate. Saw Armand last night in Paris with some woman. They looked quite close. Are you in Paris too? Alarm rippled through Bianca. She was in Florence, and she'd believed Armand was in Geneva for a finance panel. She confronted him gently after returning home. He dismissed it with an exasperated sigh. I was in transit, had to meet with a sponsor. Cassie obviously saw me with a potential investor. Nothing more. The flicker of annoyance in his eyes made her shrink back. He pressed a quick kiss to her forehead, calling her questions paranoia. Her misgivings flared, but again she chose to trust the man who had once devoted every breath to courting her. She hated feeling suspicious. Didn't love require faith? Around that time, a new rumor emerged that Armand had formed a special partnership with an exclusive men's club in London, where discreet deals and whispered alliances took shape. Bianca had never been invited to one of those gatherings, apparently gentlemen only. Cassie discreetly warned that Armand was rumored to entertain potential female clients in private chambers. Bianca, heart pounding, confronted him again. He brushed it off with a half laugh, half snort, accusing Cassie of stirring jealousy. He even turned the tables, reminding Bianca how her best friend once tried to crash a private function. Don't let her sabotage us, he insisted. Exhausted by the swirl of rumors, Bianca resolved to ignore them. She told herself these tales might be born of envy. Armand's success attracted cynics. When he arrived home, some nights reeking of champagne, she tried to swallow her fears. Focusing on small, tender gestures he still offered like a gift, from her favorite boutique or a whispered apology for being preoccupied. But with each half-truth that she accepted, the foundation of her trust eroded. She denied the creeping possibility that Armand's affection might be drifting to another woman. The warnings multiplied, yet she clung to love's illusions, until the day that illusions shattered in a single, irrevocable moment. Bianca's heart hammered in her chest as she unlocked the penthouse door. She'd returned early from a short trip to Brussels, where she'd met with patrons for her traveling gallery project. She expected to find Armand away. He'd told her he was flying to Stockholm for a potential venture. Instead, upon entering, she sensed something off, a faint scent of exotic perfume drifting through the living area, the hush that suggested someone else was inside. She followed the trail to their master bedroom. The door stood ajar. Through the gap, she caught sight of Armand's silhouette entwined with a woman's form, lips locked in a fervent kiss. The woman's face was angled away, but the sight alone twisted Bianca's stomach into knots of shock and heartbreak. Her mind screamed, "This can't be real." Her legs wobbled, a swirl of betrayal crashing over her. Unaware of her presence, they lingered in that intimate embrace. Bianca's voice caught in her throat, fury and agony colliding. At last, she managed a strangled cry, "Armand!" The pair sprang apart. The woman spun around, none other than Marianne Dubois, the so-called financial strategist whom Bianca had glimpsed months earlier. Marianne's eyes flashed with a mix of guilt and brazen confidence. Armand, hair mussed, shirt half undone, stepped forward, arms raising in a pathetic attempt at damage control. "Bianca, this isn't what it looks like," he stammered, voice trembling. Bianca's eyes brimmed with tears, but she forced her tone to remain steady. "No, it's exactly what it looks like." Her gaze shifted from Armand to Marianne, who offered a mocking tilt of her lip. "So all those rumors, all your late nights, you've been lying to me." She spat each word, bitter shock pulsing in her chest. Armand parted his lips, searching for an excuse, but found none that could mask the undeniable truth. Marianne smoothed her disheveled hair, stepping to the side with a faint roll of her eyes. As though bored by the spectacle, Bianca glared at her. The woman had the audacity to remain in her bedroom, wearing an expression that suggested she felt no shame. Rage fueled Bianca's next words. "Get out," she hissed, voice trembling with suppressed hurt. "Both of you out of this house." Armand attempted to approach, but Bianca backed away. He whispered, "Bianca, please, let's talk." His arms outstretched, as if to comfort her. She shook her head violently, tears slipping down her cheeks. The devastation of discovering him with Marianne in their sacred space seared her to the core. She'd clung to illusions for too long. Now there was no denial, no rationalizing away the betrayal. Marianne snatched her purse, muttering something about not wanting drama. She brushed past Bianca, leaving the room with an air of casual arrogance that made Bianca's stomach churn. Armand lingered, half-dressed, at a loss for words, as his wife stood trembling at the threshold of a heartbreak so profound that it would uproot everything they'd built. Bianca left the penthouse that same day, unable to remain in the space defiled by her husband's affair. She fled to her longtime friend, Cassie Scott, who welcomed her with a tearful hug. The waves of heartbreak racked Bianca's body, tears flowing in unstoppable torrents. She replayed that horrifying moment in the bedroom, questioning how she could have been so blind. Armand bombarded her phone with calls and messages, swinging between apologies and frustration. "Don't throw away our marriage over one mistake," he insisted. "Let's talk this through. I was weak, but I still love you." Each text or voicemail triggered fresh anguish. Bianca knew the trust they had was irreversibly broken. Her heart felt raw, and the betrayal ran too deep. Within days, Armand's pleas shifted to negotiation. He offered therapy, an elaborate vow to sever ties with Marianne. But the image of that embrace was scorched into Bianca's memory. She confided in Cassie, admitting she didn't see a future with a man capable of such callous deceit. Cassie encouraged her to seek legal counsel, bracing for the complexities of a high-profile divorce, especially given Armand's financial empire. That empire was all the more reason Bianca feared a vicious fight, with lawyers tearing her life apart. To her surprise, Armand seemed equally eager for a swift resolution. Perhaps he wanted to salvage his public image, keep Marianne close, or simply bury the scandal. He reached out to a reputable firm, offering an uncontested divorce if Bianca remained discreet. At first, she scoffed at his assumption she'd maintain silence. Then, exhaustion overcame her. She recognized that a dragged-out legal war might only compound her pain and hamper her ability to move forward. In a matter of weeks, Through hush-hush negotiations involving lawyers from both sides, the settlement shaped. Armand parted with a generous chunk of assets, some real estate, a respectable financial cushion, a stake in minor holdings, unlike standard prenuptial terms. He seemed anxious to finalize the divorce swiftly, presumably to quell rumors of his affair. Bianca didn't fight for more than she needed. She valued freedom over further entanglement in Armand's deals. The final decree was hammered out behind closed doors. The day she signed the divorce papers, Bianca felt a numbness. The swirl of heartbreak had steadied into quiet acceptance. She glimpsed Armand across the conference table, his usually confident posture slumped, eyes red-rimmed. He looked at her with regret, but no words passed. The judge stamped the forms. It was done. Their marriage was over. She emerged from the courthouse, heart heavy yet strangely relieved. She was no longer Miss S. Fontaine. She was simply Bianca Moretti again, carrying emotional scars from discovering the man she loved entwined with someone else. Cassie squeezed her hand, whispering, "Now you can rebuild your life." She gave a shaky nod, tears brimming. She had lost illusions, but not herself. In time, she would find a path forward, forging a new identity, one that didn't revolve around Armand's shadow. Weeks after the divorce, Bianca found herself in a strange limbo. Freed from Armand's presence, she felt both liberated and hollow. She stayed with Cassie temporarily, then used part of her settlement to lease a modest yet modern apartment in a less flashy part of London. Despite her heartbreak, she forced herself to re-engage with the philanthropic events she once championed, determined to maintain her identity beyond being Armand's ex-wife. She poured energy into her traveling gallery concept, Renaissance Horizons, that aimed to spotlight emerging artists from diverse backgrounds. She began planning a pilot exhibit, forging alliances with small but respected galleries across Europe. Freed from Armand's overshadowing presence, she discovered a sharper sense of purpose. No longer was she the side piece to a millionaire's main act. She was forging her own stage. Support came from corners she never expected. Some acquaintances from her married life, once enthralled by Armand's wealth, reached out privately, congratulating her for walking away with grace. Others quietly gossiped, likely suspecting scandal behind their swift divorce. Bianca maintained politeness, refusing to clarify the details. She refused to degrade herself by fueling tabloids with details of Armand's infidelity. If asked, she'd simply mention irreconcilable differences, letting the curious fill in blanks as they wished. Her mother, living in rural southern Italy, pleaded for her to come home, but Bianca wanted to carve her own path in the city that once symbolized her ambitious future. She accepted a part-time consultancy with a non-profit foundation, stable enough to supplement her settlement funds while she established her traveling exhibit. Each day, she labored over curation, marketing, and outreach. The swirl of creative tasks offered solace from heartbreak. One afternoon, while rummaging through boxes of old memories, she found wedding photos of her and Armand, beaming by a Tuscan chapel. A pang of sorrow curled through her. She recalled how unstoppable their love had felt, but that dream was undone by betrayal. She slid the photos into a desk drawer, shutting them away physically and metaphorically. Occasionally, she caught fleeting glimpses of Armand in the media, rumored to be strolling the Riviera with Marianne. The tabloids painted them as an intriguing pair, though sources hinted that Armand's aura was subdued, overshadowed by unspoken regrets. Bianca forced herself not to dwell on it. She'd parted from that life, focusing instead on her fragile steps toward a new tomorrow. Bit by bit, she discovered a fresh sense of independence. She attended smaller, more authentic art gatherings, forging genuine friendships. She awakened each morning with renewed determination to stand on her own achievements. The heartbreak still pulsed, but she sensed healing's slow creep. A single notion propelled her: she would not remain the ex-wife overshadowed by scandal. She was Bianca Moretti, a woman forging her own dreams, absent the illusions of wealth and false devotion. And that realization lit the path forward. While Bianca forged ahead, Armand Fontaine drifted into a curious haze. Days after finalizing the divorce, he'd attempted to continue life as normal, meeting investors, dabbling in new acquisitions. Yet a nagging emptiness trailed him. He realized that without Bianca, the penthouse felt too large, too sterile. Marianne's presence, once thrilling, turned suffocating. She demanded attention, but her allure had dulled the moment Bianca walked out of his life. He tried burying regret under a lavish lifestyle, exclusive clubs, high-stakes poker matches, private jets to exotic getaways. However, the once invigorating swirl of parties now left him hollow. He flicked through photos on his phone of him and Bianca in their happier days, her radiant smile etched into memory. Guilt gnawed at him. He recalled her quiet intelligence, her unwavering kindness. He missed her gentle voice, the sense of being genuinely understood. Occasionally, he'd reach for his phone, tempted to call. Yet he hesitated, fearful she'd reject him or ignore him altogether. The tabloids kept spinning his new romance with Marianne, though, ironically, they had parted ways days after the divorce was final. She found him moody, unresponsive, her spark overshadowed by his brooding. So Marianne disappeared into another circle of acquaintances, leaving Armand truly alone. With each passing week, business acquaintances noticed his slump. He turned erratic in negotiations, sometimes lashing out impatiently, other times appearing distracted. Rumors spread that his personal woes had cracked his formidable composure. He discovered that even his philanthropic events felt stale. Bianca had orchestrated them with flair, weaving genuine warmth into the gatherings. Now, everything seemed mechanical. One night, Armand stumbled upon an online article detailing Bianca's budding traveling gallery. She was apparently debuting a pilot exhibit in Amsterdam, featuring vibrant young sculptors from Turkey, Brazil, and Kenya. A small photo accompanied the piece, showing her standing before a large canvas, wearing a confident grin. The caption read, "Bianca Moretti, curator and founder, forging cross-cultural artistic dialogue." The pride in her eyes was palpable. A rush of longing consumed him. He recalled how he'd once supported her dream in early conversation, promising to fund her ideas, though that promise was overshadowed by his affair. Now she was succeeding on her own. An ache expanded in his chest. He recognized that she was truly gone from his life, no longer enthralled by him or reliant on his resources. She had grown beyond the heartbreak he inflicted. He closed the article, swirling a glass of whiskey, haunted by the realization that divorcing her had severed more than legal ties. It had severed the intangible bond that once nurtured him. Late that night, he gazed out the penthouse window, the city's lights glimmering. In the quiet, he accepted a painful truth. He regretted letting her go more than words could convey. Yet he doubted she'd ever open the door to him again. Bianca's traveling gallery pilot took off faster than she anticipated. The curation of dynamic young artists from varied cultures sparked interest in Europe's art circles. Her Amsterdam exhibit soared, drawing modest but enthusiastic crowds at a repurposed warehouse near the canal. Word of mouth spread, and local critics praised her balanced, evocative selection. One crisp afternoon, as she orchestrated finishing touches for the exhibit's official opening, Bianca's phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. Normally, she'd ignore it amid the flurry of tasks. Yet some intuition prodded her to answer. "Hello?" A smooth, cultured voice replied. "Good afternoon. My name is Mathilde van der Klei from the Amsterdam Arts Council. We've heard of your exhibit and would be delighted if you'd present a short talk at next week's cultural symposium. It's an opportunity to share your vision with broader networks." Surprised, Bianca agreed with excitement. This was the kind of exposure her project needed. Once the call ended, she exhaled a shaky breath. Her journey from heartbreak to self-realization was leading her to moments of recognition she'd once only dreamed of. Days later, she took the stage at the symposium, a small panel discussion overshadowed by more famous curators. Yet her earnest passion shone through. She spoke about bridging cultural divides, spotlighting underrepresented talents, and how art fosters empathy. Her words resonated, earning appreciative nods from the audience. Afterward, she mingled with patrons and local artists, forging new alliances. Amid the post-panel chatter, a slender man with salt and pepper hair approached, introducing himself as Matteo Rossi, an Italian entrepreneur devoted to philanthropic art expansions. "I admire your approach," he said with a gentle smile. "If you're open to collaboration, I might help sponsor the next city on your traveling exhibits route." Bianca, heart quickening, recognized in Matteo a sincerity reminiscent of the idealistic side she once believed Armand possessed. They chatted for nearly an hour, discovering shared interests in empowering youth through art. He invited her to a coffee near the canal the following day to brainstorm further. Bianca found herself unexpectedly at ease, curiosity growing about this thoughtful man who listened intently to every idea. That same evening back at her rented loft, Bianca considered how drastically her life had shifted. A year ago, she was Miss Fontaine, overshadowed by Armand's empire. Now she was forging her own path, attracting interest from potential sponsors like Matteo. A flicker of guilt arose. Did forging new connections so soon after her heartbreak dishonor the love she once had for Armand? But she reminded herself that Armand had shattered their bond. She owed no loyalty to memories tarnished by betrayal. So, with cautious optimism, she accepted Matteo's invitation, sipping coffee beneath Amsterdam's autumn skies, discussing art budgets, next steps for the traveling exhibit, and a subtle, friendly chemistry that hinted at a possible new beginning. In that moment, she realized she was truly moving on, forging a life unencumbered by Armand's shadow. She would remain open to new inspirations, new partnerships, and maybe even the glimmer of new love. Armand couldn't rid himself of the regret gnawing at his soul. He had tried to fill the void with new acquisitions, extraneous business trips, even fleeting social engagements. None offered the warmth Bianca once brought. The tabloids occasionally featured photos of her traveling in Europe, lauding her blossoming art project. One gossip snippet mentioned a potential romantic link between her and an Italian sponsor. Reading that, Armand felt a pang of jealousy stab him like a blade. Spurred by an impulse to see her in person, he discovered through online news that Bianca was expected back in London for a short period to finalize some logistics for her traveling exhibit's next city. For reasons he refused to analyze deeply, he booked a flight to London. Perhaps he told himself he needed closure, or maybe a last attempt at reconciliation. The city where they once lived, as husband and wife, beckoned him with bittersweet echoes. He arrived on a dreary afternoon, lodging in a boutique hotel rather than returning to the penthouse they'd once shared. Memories haunted him at every corner: the bistro where she teased him about cappuccinos, the riverside path they strolled on Sunday mornings. Each memory underscored how lonely his life had become. Through a mutual acquaintance, he learned of a small reception Bianca was holding for a select group of potential donors. Reluctant to barge in, he decided to watch from a distance. On that evening, he stationed himself across the street from the modest art venue. Through the large windows, he saw her radiant in a simple yet elegant dress, hair pinned up, greeting guests with a warm smile. She seemed so confident, each gesture exuding genuine passion for her cause. When Matteo Rossi arrived, Armand recognized him from gossip pages. The man greeted Bianca with a friendly kiss on the cheek, offering a bouquet of fresh tulips. The sight churned Armand's stomach. He glimpsed how they spoke intimately, heads bowed together, exchanging an occasional laugh. Her eyes sparkled in a way Armand hadn't seen in ages. He felt like an intruder on her new happiness. Torn between wanting to approach and acknowledging he had no place there, he remained hidden in the shadows. The reception bustled on for an hour or more, with guests filtering in and out. Each time Matteo and Bianca locked eyes or shared a grin, Armand's insides twisted. Finally, the event began winding down. As guests departed, Bianca and Matteo lingered, chatting quietly while tidying up stray brochures. Armand realized with a shock that Bianca truly seemed content, untethered from the heartbreak he caused. A pang of remorse mingled with longing. He'd once believed that if he regretted his affair enough, she might return. But seeing her now, surrounded by a sense of purpose and forging new bonds, he realized the door to their old life had likely closed for good. He drifted away into the London night, a solitary figure overshadowed by neon lights. The woman he had taken for granted was forging a bright path. If he'd had any illusions of a simple apology bridging the gap, this glimpse of her new reality dispelled them. She was lost to him, and he only had himself to blame. A week later, while Bianca finalized admin tasks in a small London co-working space, her phone lit with an incoming call from a local number she didn't recognize. She cautiously answered, half expecting another sponsor inquiry. Instead, Armand's voice flooded her ear. "Bianca." "It's me," he said softly. "I'm in London. Could we meet? Just for a few minutes?" Her pulse kicked up. She stepped outside onto the bustling sidewalk to breathe. "Armand, I'm not sure that's wise," she managed, scanning the crowd as though he might appear at any moment. He exhaled, desperation tinging his words. "Please, I just want to talk, no arguments, no pressure. I have something I need to say. Could we meet at maybe that cafe near Tower Bridge, where we used to go for breakfast on Sundays?" Memories tugged at her heart, recalling those sweet mornings. She weighed her instinct to protect her peace against the lingering sense of closure she'd never fully received. After a tense pause, she relented. "Fine, tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. But I can't promise anything beyond a polite conversation." Armand sounded grateful. "That's all I ask. Thank you." The following morning, Bianca arrived at the cafe, a cozy spot with exposed brick walls and warm pastries. She settled at a corner table, bracing for the swirl of emotions. Armand entered minutes later, scanning the place until he spotted her. Dressed simply, he appeared subdued, lacking his usual air of unstoppable confidence. She studied him over the rim of her latte as he approached. He offered a hesitant smile, taking a seat. A hush spanned them. Finally he spoke, voice thick with sincerity. "Thank you for seeing me. I know you owe me nothing. He sighed, raking a hand through his hair. "I want to say I'm sorry, truly sorry. I realize I was a fool, letting my ego and temptations destroy what we had." Bianca nodded slowly, no mask of anger, just guarded calm. "You've apologized before, in a sense, but if you need me to hear it again, I am listening." He swallowed. I see you're happy, forging your path with the traveling gallery, and possibly someone else. I glimpsed you and that Matteo man. You looked radiant. He hesitated. A part of me regrets every day that led me to push you away. I came here to ask if there's any chance we could find a new chapter, even as friends, or just open a dialogue. She sipped her coffee, mindful of each beat of her heart. "Why now, Armand? Our divorce is final. I'm moving on. You had your chance to appreciate me. You chose Marianne. His expression contorted in shame. She meant nothing. I was seduced by novelty, never understanding how precious you were until I lost you. I see now how lonely life is without your presence. I'd do anything to make amends. A swirl of emotion rose in Bianca. She recalled the agony of discovering him with Marianne. She inhaled, steadying. I appreciate that you're sorry, but you have to accept that the damage is done. My life's path diverged. You can't unravel time. He leaned closer. Can we at least talk occasionally? Start fresh, maybe remain in each other's orbits. She placed her hand on the table, ring finger unadorned. I don't hate you, Armand, but I can't let you back into my heart. I've found peace, and possibly a future that doesn't include you. That's my reality now. His eyes misted. The hush enveloping them spoke volumes of finality. She softly withdrew her hand, finishing her latte. The confrontation he sought became an undeniable acceptance that her world no longer revolved around him. For once, he had to face the regret without illusions, watching the woman he once called wife stand tall in her independence. Fate has a sly way of tangling ex-lovers' paths. In the weeks following Bianca's conversation with Armand, her traveling gallery gained momentum. More sponsors signed on, including Matteo. Together, they arranged a highlight exhibition in London, featuring sculptors from her inaugural Amsterdam show, plus new talents from Eastern Europe. The event promised a modest but influential crowd, including media coverage that could propel the project internationally. The night of the opening, the gallery space bustled with a lively hum. Bianca, in a flowing white dress, greeted arrivals with shining eyes. Matteo hovered at her side, beaming at how well the exhibit shaped up. She felt proud this was the fruit of her perseverance, unshackled from being someone's wife. Not long into the event, murmurs rippled through the crowd. Armand Fontaine had arrived. He lingered near the entrance, impeccably dressed, offering a tight nod to acquaintances. Whispers flared. Isn't that her ex-husband? Are they reconciling? Or is this drama about to unfold? Bianca steeled herself. She'd not invited him, but perhaps he heard about the exhibit through mutual channels. She braced for confrontation, but also recognized that this was a public space. He might be curious or wanting to show support. Armand strolled the exhibit's perimeter, admiring the sculptures. People parted around him, unsure how to react to his presence. Eventually, he circled toward Bianca. She turned, heart thrumming, as he approached with a subdued smile. "Congratulations," he said gently. "The exhibit looks fantastic." She forced a polite nod. "Thank you." Matteo stepped forward, eyeing Armand with measured caution. Bianca introduced them calmly. "Armand, this is Matteo Rossi, my collaborator on this gallery and sponsor for future expansions." Matteo, meet Armand Fontaine. Matteo extended a polite handshake, though tension underlay the greeting. Armand's gaze flicked between them, recognizing the man who had seemingly taken his place in Bianca's realm of support and perhaps affection. He cleared his throat. "I appreciate the invitation, though I realize you didn't specifically ask me. I wanted to see your success in person." Bianca inhaled, forcing composure. "You're welcome to appreciate the art, but please, tonight is about these emerging talents. Let's keep everything cordial." Armand nodded, scanning the crowd. He noticed onlookers discreetly gawking. His tone softened. "I won't linger. I wanted to show I support you, even if from a distance." Matteo gently placed a hand on Bianca's elbow, guiding her away to greet newly arrived donors. She left Armand standing amid the sculptures, overshadowed by the vibrancy of her new life. Observing her drifting off with Matteo, Armand felt a pang, a sense that he was a relic at the edges of her forward momentum. As the evening wore on, Bianca barely interacted with Armand. Busy with speeches and press interactions, she soared in the glow of her creative endeavor. Armand after a final, appreciative look at the central sculpture, departed quietly. The swirl of guests parted around him as though he were invisible. For once, it was the ex-wife's achievements shining center stage, and his presence felt tangential, a humbling testament that her world kept turning beautifully without him at its core. Buoyed by the emotional high from Bianca's successful exhibit, Matteo proposed a celebratory dinner the next evening. He reserved a chic, discreet restaurant in Mayfair, inviting a few of Bianca's close team members. The meal was pleasant, peppered with laughter and toasts to the blossoming traveling gallery. Bianca found herself leaning into Matteo's easy charm. His sincerity contrasted starkly with Armand's old bravado. A subtle warmth coursed through her when their hands brushed while passing a dish. Halfway through dessert, Bianca's phone lit up with a call from an unknown number. She tensed, suspecting it might be Armand or perhaps another sponsor. Stepping away, she answered. Indeed, it was Armand's voice, subdued yet earnest. "Bianca, can we meet tomorrow? I have something important to give you. Please, it won't take long." Sighing, she cast a glance at Matteo in the distance, who was engrossed in conversation. She weighed ignoring the call, but curiosity nudged her. "Fine," she said quietly. "I'll meet you at the cafe near the gallery tomorrow, around 10. Keep it brief." When she arrived the next day, Armand stood outside, clutching a small parcel. He looked more anxious than she'd ever seen. She crossed her arms. "What's this about?" He extended the parcel, eyes flickering with uncertainty. "After the exhibit, I realized there's something I never gave you. It's your wedding ring. I found it while packing some old things. You left it behind in the penthouse. I know you have no reason to wear it, but I felt you should have it." Heart constricted, she accepted the box. Inside lay the ring that once symbolized forever. She stared at it, memories swirling her, trembling. I know the radiant vow they once shared. "Thank you," she said softly, snapping the box shut. "But that's not enough reason to drag me here." He inhaled shakily. "I also wanted to say I'm leaving London soon. I realized there's no place for me here. And I wanted your blessing to remain a silent supporter of your philanthropic visions. I can still donate or help behind the scenes if you'll let me, without stepping on your territory." Bianca's eyes flickered with surprise. She recognized sincerity in him, or at least regret. "It's your choice to donate, but don't expect closeness from me. My life has moved on." "I appreciate your respect." He nodded, gaze distant. "I see how well you're doing with Matteo. If he makes you happy, then I guess that's the best outcome. I can't undo my mistakes." A pang rose in her chest, a swirl of old love's ghost mixing with relief that he was acknowledging reality. "Thank you," she whispered, tucking the ring box in her purse. "Take care, Armand." He stepped forward as if to embrace her, but she edged away. The boundaries were set. With a final, wistful look, Armand departed. She watched him fade into the London crowd, feeling a subtle release. His attempts at reconciliation were real, but came far too late. She exhaled, a shaky mixture of sadness and liberation, turning back toward the new horizon she'd cultivated without him. Back at her apartment, Bianca placed the ring box in a drawer, her final acceptance that those vows were no longer binding her. She told herself that life was too short to cling to regrets. Each day, she immersed in the gallery's expansion. Matteo proved an invaluable ally, connecting her to philanthropic networks throughout Europe. Their synergy felt genuine, unburdened by hidden agendas. As they traveled to a new exhibition site in Barcelona, Bianca found their chemistry deepening. Even a casual stroll through the winding alleys of the Gothic Quarter felt like a shared adventure. Mateo's gentle sense of humor and unwavering support for her artistic vision melted away her caution. She realized how refreshing it was to be admired for her own ideas, rather than overshadowed by a husband's empire. One evening, after a busy day setting up sculptures in a historic courtyard, they lingered under the twinkling Spanish stars, sipping sangria. Mateo gazed at her with quiet admiration, voice gentle. "Working with you these past months, it's been more than just business for me, Bianca. Hope you sense that." Her cheeks warmed, heart fluttering. She recalled the heartbreak Armand inflicted and how she'd vowed to remain cautious. Yet Mateo's kindness had become a steady balm. "I sense it," she admitted softly, eyes downcast. "But I'm still healing. My marriage's end wasn't just a heartbreak, it shook my belief in love." He took her hand delicately. "I understand. I'll move at your pace. Just know that the time I spend with you, it's more meaningful than I can express." They strolled further, arms occasionally brushing. She didn't push his hand away. As the Barcelona exhibit launched, local press coverage lauded Bianca's curatorial knack. Mateo, too, received praise for his philanthropic role. They celebrated modestly, a quiet dinner in a small tapas bar, reaffirming that success sometimes tasted sweeter in intimacy than in flashy parties. The next day, while finalizing accounts, Bianca noted how seamlessly Mateo adapted to her organizational style. She recognized what a real partnership felt like: a synergy of trust and mutual respect. The specter of Armand haunted her less, though occasionally she wondered how he fared. She suspected he might have retreated to some corner of the globe, burying regrets under new deals. But each time such thoughts arose, she gently set them aside, focusing on the present. Mateo's presence stirred an incipient happiness, reminding her that life could bloom anew after devastation. Gradually, their closeness evolved beyond professional boundaries. At times, he'd brush a strand of hair from her face or spontaneously gift her a small token from a local artisan. She felt the walls around her heart trembling, unsure if she was ready to label it love, but certain that companionship and warmth were blossoming with this man who saw her as an equal. In those ephemeral moments under Barcelona's sunset, Bianca realized how far she'd come from being the scorned wife. She had stepped into a future shaped by her own determination and found, amid the heartbreak's ashes, that she was capable of forging an even brighter chapter, with or without romance. But perhaps, after all, romance might find its way back into her life on terms she set for herself. Bianca's traveling gallery soared, branching out to Berlin next, then onto a scheduled showcase in Tokyo the following year. The success garnered global curiosity, and artists clamored for a chance to exhibit under her brand. Requests flooded her email. She scarcely had time to breathe amid the exhilarating pace. Throughout these months, Mateo's presence remained unwavering. They spent quiet evenings in lively foreign cafes, brainstorming expansions or simply discussing personal histories. She confided in him the darkest moments of her divorce, how she discovered Armand's affair, how the heartbreak nearly broke her confidence. In turn, Mateo shared his own scars, from a failed engagement that taught him the value of genuine partnership. Their mutual openness wove a deepening bond. She found herself letting go of reservations, welcoming a tender affection that blossomed in gentle increments. Meanwhile, Armand drifted in the periphery of her mind. Occasionally, she glimpsed new snippets about his deals, overshadowed by rumors that he lacked his old spark. One article suggested he had parted ways with Marianne and was moving headquarters to a smaller European city, possibly seeking a new beginning. No mention of him with a new partner or returning to old conquests. Another piece quoted an insider claiming Armand Fontaine regrets his flamboyant days. Reading these lines, Bianca felt an odd pang, a mix of sorrow for him and relief at her own freedom. Returning to London after a successful Berlin exhibit, Bianca found her new apartment abuzz with packages. Fans of her traveling gallery had sent letters, small tokens of gratitude for championing unknown talents. She also discovered an envelope from Armand containing a brief note: "I'm stepping back from the spotlight, focusing on personal growth. I see you're thriving. I'm proud, even if from afar, Armand." The message was bittersweet, stirring memories of the once charming man she married. She shared it with Cassie, who read it with pursed lips. "He's letting go," Cassie observed. "That's a good sign for both of you. You can move on fully." Bianca nodded, heart heavy yet at peace. She realized she bore no ill will now. The anger had subsided into acceptance. She wasn't naive enough to revisit the marriage, but she could permit herself the grace to forgive in time. In the hush of a rainy afternoon, she tucked Armand's note into a drawer, next to the wedding ring she'd reclaimed months earlier. They were mementos of a chapter closed. That day, Matteo visited to help finalize shipping details for the Tokyo show. They ended up cooking a simple meal together in her kitchen, laughter echoing in the snug space. He teased her about the messy trail of sauce she left on the counter. She teased him about his attempt to speak Japanese. Beneath the playful banter, Bianca felt a swell of warmth. Life had indeed moved forward, and the tide of heartbreak had ebbed, leaving a calmer, more resilient version of herself. The Tokyo exhibit proved a triumph, cementing Bianca's reputation as a rising visionary in the global art scene. Critics lauded her innovative curation, bridging cultural narratives through carefully chosen pieces. Each day, she navigated a flurry of media interviews, praising the featured artists and her sponsors, including Matteo Rossi. The two found synergy not just in business, but a quietly deepening romantic bond. They still refrained from official labels, both cherished a paced approach. But their close partnership spoke volumes. One late night in Tokyo, as the city's neon lights shimmered outside their hotel windows, Matteo gently took Bianca's hand. "You've achieved so much," he murmured. "And I see how passionately you keep giving artists a platform. I can't help but admire your strength. You overcame heartbreak with such grace." She squeezed his hand. "It wasn't always graceful," she admitted, "but I refused to let heartbreak define me. This traveling gallery was my chance to reclaim a life of my own design." Her eyes gleamed with humble pride. Matteo brushed a soft kiss on her forehead, respect radiating from his gaze. "I know you're cautious about love, but if you're willing, I want to walk this path with you. Not overshadow you, but stand beside you as a true partner." A tender acceptance spread through Bianca. She recognized that the ghost of Armand was no longer a barrier. Her heart had found new rhythms, beating in step with fresh aspirations, a new dawn untainted by old betrayals. She gave a gentle nod, leaning into Matteo's embrace. "I'd like that," she whispered. When they returned to Europe, the traveling exhibit soared to new destinations. Invitations poured in from North America, Asia, and beyond. Bianca found herself busier than ever, but no longer alone. Matteo seamlessly supported the organizational load. They built a small yet passionate team of curators, interns, and marketing professionals. Each day brimmed with possibility, a testament to how adversity could sow seeds of unexpected growth. As for Armand, occasional updates trickled in through industry chatter. He quietly scaled down his flamboyant empire, focusing on smaller, more stable ventures. Some said he grew introspective, spending time volunteering or traveling. Others claimed he occasionally glanced at photos of Bianca's success, privately acknowledging she'd blossomed beyond his shadow. Whether rumor or truth, Bianca no longer felt the sting of his name. She carried no illusions that he might reappear to disrupt her new life. One breezy afternoon in Paris, her exhibit opened at a famed art institute. Hundreds attended, enthralled by the vibrant sculptures and paintings bridging continents. Matteo approached with champagne flutes, offering a toast to your unstoppable vision. She clinked glasses with him, a bright smile lighting her face. The swirl of the crowd around them felt both exhilarating and surreal. In that moment, Bianca recognized she had reached a place beyond heartbreak. She was forging forward, not to prove anything to a husband who once betrayed her, but to honor the self she had become, a woman capable of love, achievement, and resilience, unbound by regret. For Bianca Moretti, heartbreak first thrust her into despair, her husband's brazen affair, toppling the life they built. Yet that betrayal ignited a fierce determination she never realized she possessed. Stepping away from Armand's millionaire shadow, she discovered a voice of her own, curating a traveling gallery that wove art, culture, and second chances. While Armand's regret arrived too late, Bianca forged ahead, crafting a future enriched by genuine partnerships, a renewed faith in love, and a spirit of independence that soared beyond any penthouse's confines.
He was the dashing mogul every ambitious entrepreneur wanted to emulate. She was the poised, loyal wife who had stood by him from humble beginnings. No one would have guessed that behind the gated mansion's manicured lawns, betrayal festered like poison. Until one day, in a flurry of financial sabotage, he let his mistress cut off his wife's credit cards. It was humiliating, scandalous, and only the beginning of a whirlwind that would pit powerful business alliances against each other. In a boardroom confrontation that stunned everyone, the CEO himself stepped in, but not in the way anyone expected. Buckle up. This is the story of love, greed, and revenge. Jordan Alberts was not born into luxury. He grew up in a cramped one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Milwaukee, where he learned to hustle by selling candy bars door to door at the age of 10. Over the years, Jordan's unwavering determination and charm propelled him into better circles. First at a local startup, then into his own tech company that caught the eye of an angel investor. By the time he was 35, Jordan was a self-made millionaire, a prominent figure on various entrepreneurial boards, and had connections with people like Mark Cuban, Bill Gates, and a few top executives at Google. His wife, Elizabeth Alberts née Wagner, had been with him through everything. They met in college at a small tech entrepreneur club meeting, both bright-eyed and dreaming of changing the world. Elizabeth came from a modest background, too. Her father was a retired auto mechanic, and her mother a homemaker. She'd studied communications with an emphasis on public relations, and it was through Elizabeth's network of contacts that Jordan first gained access to small local pitch events. While Jordan pitched his innovative software for automating small business tasks, Elizabeth made calls, arranged coffee meetups, and tried to capture the interest of potential backers. They married in a little chapel by Lake Michigan. It wasn't a lavish wedding, no star-studded guest list, no fancy reception at the Ritz. But to Jordan and Elizabeth, it felt perfect. A union built on genuine love, unwavering support, and a shared dream of building a life and a business empire together. Over the next decade, they grew from a modest condominium in Milwaukee to a stunning estate in Austin near Lake Travis, with a sweeping view of the water and rolling Texas hills. It was there at a philanthropic event organized by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that Jordan's name landed on the radar of top-level investors. His company's smart automation technology was recognized for its potential to transform not just small businesses, but large-scale manufacturing and logistics. Soon after, Jordan's net worth skyrocketed from a mere $5 million to well over $200 million. For a while, everything was picture perfect. The marriage was strong, their personal synergy unwavering. Elizabeth handled some philanthropic duties, organizing events, acting as a goodwill ambassador for Jordan's brand, and forging new partnerships through her PR background. Their household staff adored them, describing Elizabeth as kind, gracious, and always mindful of the people around her. But money can be a seductive force, and success can open doors to darker temptations. Jordan began attending more exclusive networking events in Beverly Hills, New York, and beyond. Elizabeth was often at his side, but there were times she couldn't attend. Perhaps she was busy finalizing the details for a charity gala, or maybe she was simply burnt out from the unrelenting schedule. It was during these times, rare at first, then increasingly common, that Jordan got close to someone else. Her name was Ava Monroe. She was a rising star in the world of technology law, representing high-profile clients like Tesla, Amazon, and a few top-tier cryptocurrency exchanges. She had a reputation for being ruthless in negotiations, seductive in social gatherings, and unbelievably charming behind closed doors. The rumor mill started buzzing the moment Ava was seen at Jordan's table during a private dinner after a tech summit in Las Vegas. Elizabeth wasn't there. She had chosen to stay in Austin, meeting with a team of female entrepreneurs Jordan was mentoring. A few people whispered about Jordan's visible fascination with Ava, the way he leaned in whenever she spoke, how they clinked champagne flutes with an intimacy that suggested more than just business talk. No one knew for certain how fast or how deep it went, but soon the signs became undeniable. Lavish gifts appeared on Ava's social media, including a diamond bracelet, suspiciously similar to the ones Jordan's company had once gifted important clients. Photos emerged of Jordan and Ava at high-end restaurants in Manhattan, always carefully angled to obscure Jordan's face, though keen observers could still identify him by the sliver of a recognizable watch or the faint reflection in a mirrored wall. By the time the rumors reached Elizabeth, they were no longer rumors, but near-confirmed facts. She felt her chest tighten, her world spinning out of control. This couldn't be real. Jordan had always been a loyal partner. But the evidence was too compelling to deny. She confronted him in the privacy of their Lakeview mansion. At first, Jordan denied everything. Yet denial quickly turned into a half-hearted admission once Elizabeth presented him with photographic evidence. Like a skilled negotiator used to controlling deals, Jordan tried to manipulate the situation, insisting that Ava was just a business associate, someone he occasionally had dinner with. But Elizabeth saw right through it. She had always been adept at reading him. A chill settled over their once loving home. Elizabeth, determined to preserve her dignity, demanded they enter marriage counseling, or at the very least step away from high-profile events until they resolved their issues in private. Jordan nodded, providing non-committal answers. He had never liked therapy, never seen the point in discussing feelings with a stranger. He agreed to her wishes on the surface, yet beneath the facade, he continued his involvement with Ava, allowing the illicit relationship to take root. This was the calm before the storm. For soon Elizabeth's sense of betrayal would pale in comparison to the massive financial and emotional blow about to come her way. Weeks passed. Elizabeth tried to focus on her philanthropic work and personal projects, attempting to distract herself from the growing chasm between her and Jordan. When a local charity she sponsored invited her to discuss future donations, Elizabeth discovered something shocking. Her personal credit card was declined. Embarrassment washed over her in front of the unsuspecting staff. She tried another card. Sure, it must have been a glitch, but that too was declined. The staff politely suggested she call her bank, and Elizabeth excused herself with a polite smile, her hands trembling as she left the office. Elizabeth called the bank suspecting fraud or an administrative error, but the bank's representative informed her that both cards had been cancelled the previous week. Under their joint account, they were tied to Jordan's finances, and evidently Jordan had authorized the cancellation. It felt like a punch to the gut. Why on earth would Jordan cancel her cards without her knowledge or consent? They had never had major financial disputes. Elizabeth always had access to family funds, albeit responsibly. She dialed Jordan, but the call went straight to voicemail. She sent him several frantic texts. No response. Later that evening, Jordan came home exuding an air of tired disinterest. Elizabeth confronted him the moment he walked through the door. Under the chandelier's glow, which reflected in her tear-filled eyes, Jordan brushed aside her questions with a dismissive wave. "I needed to consolidate our finances," he said, removing his blazer. "You can use the joint checking account for a while." "No big deal, no big deal." Elizabeth's frustration swelled. "You cancelled my credit cards without even telling me what's going on. Are you punishing me for something?" Jordan's eyes flicked away nervously, and that was when Elizabeth realized he was lying again. The next words that came from his mouth were not only shocking, but also laced with a cruelty she never imagined he was capable of. "Ava suggested we revisit some of my expenses. She found that you were spending frivolously. It made sense to limit credit usage." Elizabeth's heart dropped to her stomach. Ava. That woman was now meddling in their finances. As if the affair wasn't enough, Jordan had allowed this mistress to encroach into an arena that Elizabeth believed was sacred, her own household stability. "What is Ava doing reviewing my spending? Since when does your fling get to decide what is or isn't frivolous?" Elizabeth spat tears, threatening to spill. Jordan made an attempt at a calming gesture, but his words only fanned the flames. "She's helping me restructure. Her firm has great insights into corporate finances. This is about the business, Elizabeth. It's not personal." Not personal. Elizabeth recalled how intimately personal their marriage had always been. They built every aspect of their lives together, from small decisions about wallpaper colors to big entrepreneurial leaps that demanded everything from both of them. Now Jordan was shutting her out, consulting Ava instead. In a quavering voice, Elizabeth demanded, "Reinstate my cards. I am your wife. I have a right to our finances, and you know I've never been irresponsible with money." Jordan's face hardened with a new arrogance. "Not until we finalize our restructure," he said, referring to some nebulous plan Elizabeth knew little about. "I'll handle everything in the meantime." That moment, that cold exchange, was a harbinger of the bigger heartbreak to come. If Jordan was letting Ava control such details, what other aspects of their marriage was he willing to let her sabotage? As the days turned into weeks, Elizabeth discovered one more blow after another. The monthly allowance she used to cover household expenses had been slashed without explanation. The staff, including her personal assistant, was laid off. Bills began piling up, addressed to her name, but with no means to pay them aside from groveling at Jordan's feet. Friends and family started to notice. Elizabeth tried to hide her shame. She confided in her sister Caroline, who was enraged at Jordan. "This is financial abuse," Caroline insisted. "You should speak to a lawyer." Elizabeth shuddered at the thought. She still believed they could salvage their relationship, that Jordan would snap out of whatever daze Ava had put him in. Yet a small part of her whispered that maybe Caroline was right. Then came a fateful meeting at a hotel conference suite in Los Angeles, one that Jordan had insisted Elizabeth attend. It was a gathering of major tech moguls, including Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, who were rumored to be there to discuss new tech innovations in global logistics. When Elizabeth arrived, she quickly realized something was off. She saw Jordan in the lounge area, standing far too close to Ava, exchanging hushed conversations. Seeing Elizabeth from a distance, Jordan slipped away discreetly, leaving Ava behind. Elizabeth approached her husband with a forced smile. "I'm here," she said, desperate to maintain composure. "What's the plan?" Jordan gave a curt nod. "There's a closed-door session for the key players only. You'll have to wait outside." In the past, Elizabeth had always been included in these key player sessions as Jordan's partner and PR advisor. The subtle exclusion burned her pride. She swallowed her anger. "Sure, I can wait." After hours of waiting, she found Jordan and Ava laughing together near the bar. As she approached, Jordan's phone buzzed, and he stepped away. That was when Ava turned a chilling smirk on her face. "You know Jordan's a visionary," Ava said, swirling the wine in her glass. "He needs someone who can keep up with him on all levels: business, ambition, excitement." Elizabeth felt her face flush with anger. "I've been by his side for years. We built this together." Ava gave a theatrical shrug. "Maybe in the past. But times change. People evolve. I guess you were too comfortable." Elizabeth clenched her fists, biting back a retort. She was determined not to make a scene in front of such influential people. But oh, how she wanted to lash out to expose Ava for the home-wrecker she was. Ava flicked her hair behind her shoulder, noticing Elizabeth's agitation. "Things will be better if you accept it," she cooed, as if offering advice to a friend. Jordan's moved on in more ways than one. The finances are just the beginning. Elizabeth's body went cold. She realized in that moment how truly precarious her situation was. Ava was not simply a fling. She was positioning herself as a partner in Jordan's professional and personal life. The credit cards were just one step in what looked like a systematic campaign to push Elizabeth out of everything she and Jordan had built. Still, Elizabeth refused to crumble. She left the event quietly, but her mind churned with rage and heartbreak. It was time for her to take action. She needed to protect herself, her assets, and her dignity. Little did she know that as she plotted her next move, Jordan and Ava were preparing a financial ambush that would push her to the brink. Only fate and an unexpected intervention by a certain CEO would alter the course of their twisted game. In the days after the Los Angeles conference, Elizabeth attempted to consult with attorneys. She picked up a referral from a friend who once worked with a high-profile divorce lawyer in New York. The initial phone calls were sobering, with Jordan's empire being primarily under his name and her credit cards cancelled. She had limited liquidity to hire top-tier representation. Even so, Elizabeth pressed forward. She managed to scrape together some funds from a personal savings account. Jordan had no access to money she had set aside from her early PR consulting days. It wasn't a large sum, but enough to secure a preliminary consultation. During that consultation, her lawyer, Michelle Liu, a bright and empathetic but hard-hitting attorney based in Houston, laid out the hard truth. Financial abuse and infidelity are serious grounds for divorce, Michelle said, scanning through Elizabeth's financial statements. But if Jordan's funneling money and assets into new accounts under his own name, or shifting resources to places you can't see, we need proof, and we need it fast. Elizabeth swallowed. She recounted Ava's involvement, how she was effectively orchestrating the restructuring. Michelle's pen scribbled quickly over a notepad. "You have a right to half of the marital assets, Elizabeth, but it looks like your husband is 2 steps ahead. We must move quickly. The plan was to gather evidence of Jordan's wrongdoing and file a court order to freeze marital assets, ensuring Elizabeth had a fair shot. But as they began drafting documents and rummaging through what records Elizabeth had, an avalanche of shocking details surfaced. Jordan wasn't merely cancelling credit cards. He was transferring stocks from their joint portfolio into an account under his newly formed trust. He had changed the authorized signatory details for a few of their properties, effectively locking Elizabeth out. He was also taking out lines of credit against certain properties, presumably to fund new ventures that, as Elizabeth suspected, involved Ava. The emotional strain weighed heavily on Elizabeth. She couldn't sleep, her appetite waned. Each day felt like standing at the center of a storm. Yet if she thought this was the worst of it, she was mistaken. One evening, after finalizing some documents with Michelle, Elizabeth returned to her mansion to find her keycard didn't work on the electronic locks. Pounding on the door, she shouted for the live-in staff if any were left. Seconds later, the door opened slightly, revealing Ava's face. "Jordan's not here," Ava said icily. "You should call next time." Elizabeth's heart hammered. "This is my home. Get out of my way," she demanded, trying to push past. But Ava slid in front of her, refusing to budge. "He told me you're not welcome here anymore until the legal mess is settled," Ava sneered. "I have every right to ask you to leave." Elizabeth was trembling with fury. "You have no rights here. You're the mistress, not the wife." With a cold laugh, Ava stepped aside and pointed at Elizabeth's luggage haphazardly placed in the foyer. "Jordan left these for you," she said. "He said to pack whatever else you need and let security escort you out if you refuse to leave." Elizabeth blinked away tears, her throat raw with outrage. She was being thrown out of her own home by the woman who had intruded into her marriage. That moment was a cruel epiphany. Jordan had not only cut off her finances, but now he was physically pushing her out of the place she had shared with him for years. Yet in all that darkness, a sliver of light emerged the next morning. Elizabeth received a phone call from a close mutual friend, Marcus O'Donnell, who worked with Jordan at a large tech conglomerate in Dallas. Marcus was someone Elizabeth trusted, an executive who had known Jordan since the early days. He had seen them build the company from the ground up. Elizabeth Marcus said, his tone urgent. "I don't know everything that's going on, but I heard from your staff that you've been locked out. There's a board meeting next week. Jordan wants to finalize some big decisions. If you can get to that meeting and talk to the chairman, maybe you can find some leverage." Elizabeth's breath caught in her chest. The chairman of this particular conglomerate was none other than famed CEO David Hartridge, known not just for his visionary leadership, but also for a strict code of ethics. Over the years, Hartridge had invested heavily in Jordan's business. He was the reason Jordan sat on that board. "He's not the type to meddle in personal affairs," Marcus warned. "But if Jordan's pulling stunts that compromise your share in the company, Hartridge might step in. He's big on fairness and hates scandal." It was the glimmer of hope Elizabeth needed. She thanked Marcus profusely. The plan was simple: attend the board meeting, confront Jordan in front of Hartridge, and present enough evidence of Jordan's wrongdoing to ensure the board and possibly the entire conglomerate would not stand for it. She spent the week gathering documents, bank statements, and text message screenshots that implicated Jordan in unscrupulous financial moves. Michelle Liu helped compile everything into a neat folder. "You need to be prepared for Jordan to lash out," Michelle warned. "He'll try to discredit you in front of the board." Elizabeth nodded her determination, overshadowing her fear. She practiced her speech, reciting it, in the mirror of her modest hotel room, where she had temporarily moved. Heart pounding, she told herself that if there was ever a time to fight, it was now. Finally, the day of the board meeting arrived. Elizabeth, dressed in a sleek black pantsuit that radiated confidence. She walked into the corporate skyscraper in downtown Dallas, her chin held high despite the knot in her stomach. She spotted Jordan in the corridor, flanked by Ava, and a couple of the board members. As soon as he saw Elizabeth, his expression darkened. "You're not supposed to be here," Jordan said, trying to keep his voice low. Elizabeth raised her chin. "I'm still an investor in your company. I hold shares. So yes, I'm attending the board meeting." Ava stepped in with a condescending smile. "Don't make a scene, Elizabeth. This meeting is for serious stakeholders." "I am a serious stakeholder," Elizabeth retorted, voice steady. "I'm your wife, still legally, and I'm half of this empire's foundation." Behind them, a tall figure approached CEO David Hartridge himself, a man in his 50s with graying temples and a firm handshake. He regarded Elizabeth with polite curiosity. "Ms. Alberts, I presume?" Elizabeth nodded, handing over her invitation papers and a letter from her attorney, which stated that she possessed partial shares. Hartridge studied the documents, then gave a curt nod indicating she was allowed to attend. Jordan shot Elizabeth a glare that spoke volumes. You have no idea what you're getting into. But Elizabeth did. She was here to preserve her dignity, her livelihood, and the legacy she had helped build. The meeting commenced in a sleek conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Dallas skyline. The board members sat around a large mahogany table, exchanging pleasantries about the upcoming quarter's projections. Jordan made a short presentation on a new partnership with a logistics firm, highlighting expansions and new contracts. A few board members clapped. Then came time for open discussion. Elizabeth raised her hand, clearing her throat. "I'd like to address some concerns about the financial structuring Jordan is proposing." She began, her voice reverberating across the silent room. Jordan's face reddened. Ava, seated beside him, tried to intervene. "We should keep personal matters out of board discussions," she said. But Elizabeth pressed on, raising the folder of evidence. "These changes aren't just personal," Elizabeth said. "They could affect company stability. Jordan is funneling resources into a new trust, making questionable decisions without transparency. I have documents signed by him with references to Ms. Ava Monroe, demonstrating a conflict of interest that could potentially compromise investor trust." A hush fell over the room. Hartridge's brow creased. "Jordan, is this true?" Jordan stood, scrambling for composure. "This is a personal matter. Elizabeth is overstepping her bounds." "She's not." Hartridge replied, his voice sharp. "If there's a conflict of interest that threatens the stability of our partnership, it's very much a board matter." Jordan's eyes darted between Hartridge and Elizabeth. For the first time, he seemed cornered, uncertain how to proceed. Ava shot Elizabeth a lethal glare, realizing that Elizabeth's boldness had forced the topic into official territory. The tension was palpable. Elizabeth's heart thumped so loudly, she was certain everyone could hear it. But she stood her ground. Continuing. "I also discovered lines of credit being taken against marital properties to fund expansions. These expansions could be legitimate, but the details are obscured. I have reason to believe Ms. Monroe is manipulating these finances for her personal gain." Murmurs rippled through the board. A couple members exchanged uneasy glances. Even those who might have sided with Jordan seemed rattled by the magnitude of Elizabeth's accusations. Hartridge steepled his fingers, evaluating the situation. I propose we recess for 15 minutes. Jordan, Elizabeth Miss Monroe, please step into my office. Jordan inhaled frustration etched across his features, but he couldn't refuse the CEO's request, not without causing a catastrophic scene. The three followed Hartridge into a glass-walled corner office, shutting the door behind them. In that tense, enclosed space, the real battle began. Elizabeth laid out her evidence on the polished table before Hartridge. Jordan tried to dismiss it all as a personal dispute, but Hartridge was no fool. He could see the potential for scandal, especially if a partner was using company infrastructure for personal vendettas. Throughout this heated exchange, Ava attempted to deflect blame. She portrayed herself as a legal advisor, merely suggesting financial moves, disclaiming any wrongdoing. But Elizabeth's carefully compiled documents suggested otherwise. Emails, text messages, and proposed legal documents bore Ava's digital fingerprints. Hartridge's expression darkened. Jordan, this is unacceptable. If these documents are authentic, you've put your personal entanglements ahead of corporate responsibility. I won't allow it under my leadership. Jordan's face went pale. He tried to protest, to label Elizabeth's claims as overblown, but Hartridge had already made up his mind. Until this is sorted out, Jordan, I'm placing your proposals on hold. We can't move forward with any major financial changes if they're under this sort of ethical cloud. Elizabeth felt a surge of relief, a faint vindication. While she hadn't resolved the core issue of Jordan's betrayal, at least the board wasn't letting him run roughshod over her financial future. But Jordan, cornered and embarrassed, lashed out in desperation. You can't shut me down like this, he snapped at Hartridge, voice tight with anger. I'm the one who made that original deal with your conglomerate. You need my innovation. Hartridge stood up, bristling at Jordan's tone. I'm the CEO, and you've just made me question your reliability and integrity. Watch yourself, Jordan. Ava stepped closer to Jordan, placing a hand on his arm to calm him, but he shrugged her off. You'll regret this, he warned Hartridge, then turned to Elizabeth. And you made a fool of me in front of everyone. Elizabeth clenched her fists, refusing to cower. You did that to yourself, she said, voice trembling with both fear and resolve. Jordan stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Ava followed quickly, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Hartridge sighed, looking at Elizabeth, who was holding back tears. Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Hartridge said. I'm sorry about your personal struggles, but I have to protect the board's interests. If you need anything, contact my office. I'm not a family court judge, but I won't let Jordan drag the company down. With that, Elizabeth let out a shaky breath. She had achieved a small but crucial victory, yet she couldn't shake the nagging sense that Jordan, humiliated and cornered, was far from finished. She left the skyscraper, stepping out into the bright Dallas sun, uncertain, but determined. Little did she know this chapter was only the start of a far more explosive confrontation, one that would involve security teams, sudden betrayals, and a twist that would bring Jordan himself to his knees. Life outside the mansion was lonely, but Elizabeth was thankful for the reprieve from Ava's manipulations. She rented a small apartment near downtown Austin and used what funds she had left to secure her basic needs, while Michelle continued to press for a financial freeze on Jordan's assets. In the weeks following the tense board meeting, Jordan went surprisingly quiet. No more legal letters arrived. No more credit lines were sabotaged. He didn't attempt to contact Elizabeth, nor did Ava. Instead, it seemed as though they had retreated into some silent fortress, likely strategizing their next move. Elizabeth took advantage of the lull. She reconnected with old friends and mentors, explaining partially at least what she was going through. While many were shocked, they offered support in the form of references, moral encouragement, and occasional leads for a stable job or a business partnership. Despite the heartbreak, Elizabeth discovered a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just a passive bystander in Jordan's world. She had her own capabilities, her own strengths. Slowly, she started consulting for small tech firms, using her communications and PR background to help them craft compelling pitches. It wasn't a fortune, but it was honest work that reminded her she could stand on her own 2 feet. Then one evening, she received a phone call from an unknown number. A crisp, professional voice greeted her. "Hello, Elizabeth. This is Patricia Carlson. I'm an executive assistant at Tesla, working under Elon Musk's leadership team." Elizabeth's heart thudded. She had met Patricia briefly at a tech conference in Berlin 2 years ago, but they'd never exchanged more than pleasantries. "How can I help you?" Elizabeth asked, mind racing. Patricia hesitated. "I might have information relevant to your predicament with Jordan. Let's just say some of our legal divisions have been observing Ava Monroe for a while, and some red flags have come up." Red flags. Elizabeth's curiosity flared. "You're investigating her?" A slow exhale from the other end. "Our major concern is that she's potentially engaged in insider trading, or at least something that veers close to it. She's been known to manipulate powerful men to gain inside info on deals, especially around new technologies. We don't have direct evidence, but we do know that she's heavily involved in your husband's finances. We suspect she might be siphoning resources for her own agendas." Elizabeth's mind reeled. This was bigger than a domestic spat. Ava might be leveraging Jordan's resources and connections to stake her own claims in the tech world. That explained the sudden shifts in finances, the new trust accounts, and the lines of credit. Patricia continued. "We want to bring her down, but we need more information. You, Elizabeth, might be in a unique position to gather that." Elizabeth tapped her fingers on the kitchen counter. "Isn't that something your legal team handles?" A rueful laugh. "Yes, but we need Jordan's direct involvement. We suspect he's unwittingly giving her access to confidential materials through corporate crossovers or joint ventures. If you can help us prove it, we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, protect Tesla's proprietary data, and help you gain leverage in your divorce." Elizabeth considered the offer. It was risky. If Ava was truly up to something illegal, Elizabeth could expose herself to potential backlash, but the lure of finally getting the upper hand was strong. "I'll do what I can," Elizabeth replied cautiously. "But how do I communicate with you about this?" Patricia gave her a secure email address and instructions on how to encrypt files. "And one more thing," Patricia said, before hanging up. "People like Ava are cunning. She'll anticipate your every move. Don't trust phone lines or any device that Jordan has access to. Be careful." Elizabeth thanked her and ended the call. Adrenaline coursing through her. For the next few days, she scoured her digital archives for anything that might hint at insider information. Jordan's old emails messages about collaborations with major tech companies like Tesla or Amazon, documents that Ava might have manipulated anything that showed a trail of questionable activity. She found a few suspicious threads, forwarded emails from Jordan's corporate account that were CC'd to Ava's personal address. Attachments relating to Tesla's Project Next Gen battery were among them, though none of this was strictly proof of wrongdoing yet. Elizabeth compiled what she could and sent them to the secure email Patricia provided. In response, Patricia confirmed that these were valuable leads, but incomplete. "Keep digging," she urged, "and let me know if you get direct evidence of deals or monetary gains tied to these inside details." Meanwhile, Michelle Elizabeth's lawyer was preparing for a preliminary hearing to freeze some of Jordan's assets. She insisted Elizabeth come to court to testify about the financial abuse and the suspicious activities they had uncovered. But Jordan's side surprised them by agreeing to a partial freeze without argument. "That's strange," Michelle said, tapping a pen against the conference table. "Why would he agree so easily?" Elizabeth shrugged, perplexed. "Maybe he realizes fighting me will look bad in front of the board." But Michelle wasn't convinced. "I suspect he's preparing a bigger move. Be vigilant. He may have more leverage than we know." The next morning, Elizabeth received an unsolicited text from Jordan. "We need to talk, face to face." She felt a swirl of conflicting emotions: anger, sorrow, curiosity. But she knew she had to tread carefully. She agreed to meet him in a public place, a cafe near the courthouse, where she could keep the upper hand. When Jordan arrived, he looked tired, as though the weight of his troubles had worn him down. He offered a half smile, which Elizabeth did not return. "Liz," he began using the old nickname he once uttered, with affection. Things got out of hand. She crossed her arms. "You think—" He sighed, scanning her face for warmth that was no longer there. "I want to settle this amicably. We can discuss spousal support, property divisions, everything. No need for a long, nasty court battle." Elizabeth let the silence hover. She wasn't naive enough to believe him at face value. "Amicably? Are you telling me Ava is out of the picture?" Jordan's shoulders tensed. "This is about you and me, not her. Look, maybe I got carried away with Ava's advice. She's a brilliant attorney." "She's manipulative," Elizabeth cut in sharply. He brushed the point aside. "Regardless, I'm willing to compromise, but I need you to lay off this insider trading nonsense. It's reckless. You're endangering my reputation." Elizabeth realized then that Jordan knew she'd been snooping into his communications. Perhaps Tesla's legal inquiries had begun reverberating in his circle. She saw the fear in his eyes. He was worried, if not about losing her, then about losing his empire. "You made me the enemy," Elizabeth replied, in a hushed, trembling tone. "When you let your mistress cut off my cards and throw me out of my home." Jordan looked away, shame flickering on his face. "I didn't handle that well. But you have to understand the pressure I'm under with these deals." She waited, letting him squirm. Then he continued. "You'll get a fair share. I promise. I just need you to stop meddling in my professional affairs, especially with Tesla or any other major collaborators. You'll ruin me if you do." A bitter laugh escaped Elizabeth. She thought of all the times she had stood beside him, protecting him, representing him before powerful players, forging alliances that were crucial to his success. Now he was pleading for her, not to ruin him. The irony nearly choked her. Before she could respond, Jordan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and muttered a soft curse. "I have to go," he said, throwing some cash on the table for their untouched coffees. Elizabeth watched him leave, a mixture of pity and disdain swirling in her stomach. It was obvious he was desperate, but was this a genuine attempt at reconciliation, or a ploy to keep her from uncovering more incriminating information about Ava? That question lingered as she returned to her apartment, drained. However, a new email from Patricia waited in her inbox. It contained an attachment, a partial timeline of suspicious trades linked to accounts rumored to be controlled by Ava Monroe. There were large bets placed on Tesla's stock ahead of public announcements. Gains in the tens of millions. This is huge, Elizabeth thought. If she connected these trades to emails or calls between Jordan and Ava, it could be the smoking gun. And while Elizabeth had no intention of going to the feds on her own, Tesla's legal team could bury Ava, and by extension, Jordan's complicity, if he was involved. Elizabeth clutched her phone, anxiety coursing through her. She was walking a razor's edge. One false step, and Jordan might retaliate more fiercely, or Ava might strike. But a successful strike against Ava could free Elizabeth from this entire ordeal, giving her the leverage to secure a fair divorce settlement, or even land Jordan in deeper trouble, depending on his role. She reached for her phone to text Patricia when it buzzed in her hand. A call from an unknown number again. Tentatively, Elizabeth answered. A man's voice greeted her calm and steady. "Hello, Ms. Alberts. My name is Gregory Shaw. I'm part of CEO David Hartridge's legal counsel. He asked me to follow up regarding the situation with your husband." Elizabeth's heart skipped. Hartridge's legal counsel. "We understand from Mr. Hartridge's conversation with you that there might be unethical or even illegal behavior in play," Gregory continued. "The board is concerned about potential liability if Jordan's personal dealings spill into our corporate structure. We can't risk another scandal. Mr. Hartridge would like to assist you discreetly." Elizabeth exhaled slowly. She was on the cusp of powerful alliances forming against Jordan and Ava, but the more people got involved, the more dangerous it felt. Gregory concluded, "We'll be in touch with your lawyer. If you have any crucial evidence, Mr. Hartridge suggests you keep it secure. He wants to avoid a public meltdown, but he's prepared to do what's necessary to protect the company's interests, and that includes supporting you in your legal disputes, if it comes to that." Hanging up. Elizabeth felt a measure of validation. The cracks in Jordan's seemingly untouchable world were growing. Perhaps justice would prevail. Yet as she prepared to finalize the next round of documents for Michelle, a gnawing worry kept her awake at night. Cornered animals are the most dangerous, and Jordan, though once gentle and loving, had shown he could be ruthless when threatened. She braced herself for the storm that was surely coming. The next time Elizabeth saw Jordan in person, it wasn't by chance or a carefully arranged meeting. It was at the headquarters of Hartridge's conglomerate in Dallas. A sudden emergency board session had been called to address urgent corporate matters, and Elizabeth, having been notified by Gregory Shaw, arrived prepared. She walked into the reception area, her heart pounding with anticipation. Michelle Liu had insisted on accompanying her, but at the last minute she was called to handle a crucial filing. Elizabeth went alone, relying on the moral support from Gregory and the knowledge that Hartridge wanted the truth on record. Jordan was already inside the boardroom with Ava, who paced like a clad tiger. When Elizabeth entered, they both snapped their heads in her direction. Ava's glare could have sliced glass. Jordan's face was inscrutable, tense, angry, but also tinged with fear. Hartridge arrived moments later, trailed by a few board members and legal advisors. He wasted no time in stating the purpose of the meeting. "Allegations have come to my attention that Ms. Monroe has been engaging in stock trades leveraging proprietary information from Jordan's company and potentially from our own collaborations. We need to clarify the truth. Now." Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Ava's jaw clenched. "This is preposterous," she began. "We demand to see your proof." Hartridge nodded to one of his advisors, who distributed printed documents, timelines of suspicious trades, tied to accounts flagged by Tesla's legal team, along with correspondences that Elizabeth and Patricia had pieced together. Jordan snatched a packet from the advisor. His eyes swept over the page's color, draining from his face. Ava's lips thinned, and for a moment Elizabeth could see the faintest flicker of panic in her eyes. Hartridge pinned them with a stern gaze. "Jordan, you've been a valuable partner. I don't want to see your personal life derail your professional standing, but this is bigger than your marriage. Insider trading is a federal crime, and if Ms. Monroe is using your business resources to pull this off, you're implicated." Ava recovered quickly. She placed a hand on Jordan's arm, her voice smooth. "This is a misunderstanding, David. Anyone can align stock trades with corporate announcements. It's called speculation." Elizabeth decided enough was enough. She stood. "Speculation is one thing, but forwarding private emails, entire business proposals, and preliminary press releases is not speculation. I've seen the messages. You're literally discussing the best times to execute trades based on announcements that hadn't been made public yet." Ava whirled on Elizabeth. "You have no legal standing to claim that. You're just a scorned wife trying to sabotage Jordan and me." Elizabeth's blood boiled. "We'll let the evidence speak. There are even time-stamped emails from Jordan's corporate account sent to your personal email, Ms. Monroe, discussing upcoming expansions and product launches. Then trades were executed in your name or trusts linked to you within hours." A hush followed. Jordan's hands shook slightly. He seemed torn between denial and guilt. After all, the evidence was damning. If he denied it outright, he'd appear foolish. But if he admitted his involvement, he risked criminal charges and the wrath of the board. Hartridge leaned forward, his voice firm. "Jordan, I need answers." "Were you aware of these trades?" Jordan stared at the table, words refusing to form. Finally, he managed, Ava said it was all above board, that it was just normal investing. Ava let out a short laugh, but it sounded hollow. "If you want to scapegoat me, Jordan, think carefully," she warned. "We made certain deals in your name as well. Your signatures are on plenty of documents." The entire boardroom seemed to hold its breath. Hartridge addressed one of his legal advisors. "Have we sent this to the SEC?" "Not yet," the advisor responded. "We wanted to confront them first." Jordan shot to his feet, panic etched on his face. "No need to escalate it. We can handle this internally. If I undo the trades, repay any gains, repay tens of millions of dollars," Hartridge asked. "And that would just be the tip of the iceberg if the SEC digs deeper. This is out of our hands if they launch a formal investigation." Elizabeth watched Jordan unravel. This was the man who had once been so composed, so unstoppable. Now he was cornered, sweat beading on his forehead. Ava, too, looked like a wild animal backed into a corner, eyes darting around the room. At that moment, a building security guard appeared at the door, knocking softly. "Mr. Hartridge, you asked for security on standby," he announced quietly. "Thank you," Hartridge replied, his tone like steel. "I believe we might need you." Ava's eyes flitted toward the door, then back to Hartridge. She adopted a pleading tone. "David, you know me. I've handled legal matters for some of the biggest players in the industry. I would never do anything to jeopardize your trust." Hartridge's face remained stony. "I trusted Jordan, not you. And this evidence suggests you're at the center of a major ethical breach. If you don't have a verifiable explanation for each of these trades and how you obtained insider information. I have no choice but to protect the company from liability." Suddenly, Jordan snapped. Fear twisted into anger, and he pointed a trembling finger at Elizabeth. "You did this. You ruined everything because you couldn't handle that I moved on." Elizabeth steadied her breathing, preparing to reply. But Hartridge cut in calm yet firm. "Don't blame her for your poor decisions. You let your personal affair become a corporate liability." Something in Jordan cracked. He lunged toward Elizabeth as if to grab her documents or her phone, an irrational move likely spurred by desperation. But he never made contact. In a blink, the security guard stepped forward and intercepted Jordan, gripping his arms. "Stand down, sir," the guard said, voice authoritative. Jordan struggled, but the guard was a solid wall of muscle. Ava shrieked. "Let him go." "This is a private matter." Hartridge shook his head, anger coloring his features. "You just attempted to assault someone in my boardroom. Security remove Mr. Alberts from the premises." Jordan's eyes widened in disbelief. "You can't do that. I'm on the board." "Not anymore," Hartridge said grimly. "I can and I will. You're suspended pending an internal investigation. Once that concludes, we'll determine your status. Now go and take Ms. Monroe with you." A second guard stepped in, guiding Ava toward the door as she protested threatening lawsuits and defamation claims. But her words rang hollow, overshadowed by the looming specter of an SEC investigation. Elizabeth stood off to the side, stunned by how quickly it had escalated from a tension-filled meeting to an outright meltdown. As Jordan and Ava were led out, Jordan craned his neck to shout at her, "You'll pay for this, Elizabeth. Don't think you've won." But the threat carried little weight now. In that moment, Elizabeth felt the mixture of triumph and sorrow that comes with toppling a man she once loved. She hadn't wanted to see Jordan destroyed, only to protect herself and the life they had built together. But Jordan's actions and Ava's ambition had forced her hand. Hartridge dismissed the board members, soon after instructing his legal team to cooperate fully with any investigations. He turned to Elizabeth with a sympathetic frown. "I'm sorry you had to endure this, Ms. Alberts. I assure you we'll handle it lawfully. Whatever personal or marital disputes remain, I hope you find closure." Elizabeth gave him a small nod. "Thank you. I appreciate your fairness." She gathered her documents and left the skyscraper, the bright Texas sun striking her face as she stepped onto the street. The entire drama replayed in her mind. He let his mistress cut off my cards, but the CEO called security on him. She thought a bitter yet satisfying sense of irony spreading in her chest. She wasn't naive enough to think it was over. Legal battles would continue, depositions would be taken, and the divorce was far from final. But in this pivotal moment, she had taken back her power, standing against the storm that Jordan and Ava had unleashed. And for the first time in months, Elizabeth felt a glimmer of hope that she might in the end be free from their tyranny. In the weeks that followed, word spread like wildfire. News outlets picked up on rumors of insider trading linked to a high-profile tech investor, hinting that a major name was under investigation. It didn't take long for the rumor mill to connect the dots to Jordan Alberts and his mysterious attorney-turned-partner, Ava Monroe. Elizabeth watched from the sidelines, inundated with calls and messages from acquaintances, reporters, and sometimes even old college classmates she hadn't spoken to in years. She ignored most of them, preferring to let the legal process unfold without adding fuel to the media frenzy. Jordan, under immense legal and financial pressure, attempted to strike a deal if Elizabeth agreed to keep quiet and not testify against him or Ava regarding insider trading, he would give her a generous divorce settlement. The settlement included alimony, a hefty lump sum, and properties that would secure her financial future. However, Elizabeth refused any agreement that required her to lie or withhold the truth if subpoenaed. Nonetheless, she allowed her lawyer Michelle to work out a fair settlement that didn't involve perjury. Eventually, Jordan capitulated, realizing he had to salvage what he could from the marriage and business meltdown. The final settlement granted Elizabeth a significant portion of the assets, the mansion by Lake Travis, ironically, and a sizable share of Jordan's original tech startup. Meanwhile, Ava disappeared from the public eye, her reputation in tatters. Rumors surfaced that she'd fled the country perhaps to avoid legal repercussions, while others suggested she was hiding out in some luxury villa, waiting for the storm to pass. Either way, her days of meddling in Jordan's finances seemed to be over. Elizabeth didn't celebrate Jordan's downfall. She quietly grieved the end of a marriage that had started in love and partnership, yet she also felt relief and a renewed sense of self. She returned to the Lake Travis mansion, deciding whether to keep it or sell. The sweeping views of the water brought back memories, some of which felt like knives to her heart, others that warmed her soul. She began a new chapter in her life, leveraging her PR skills to start a consultancy focused on helping women entrepreneurs navigate both business and personal challenges. She named it Phoenix Rose Consulting, symbolizing rebirth and resilience. To her surprise, she found more joy in championing other women than she ever did, standing behind Jordan at glitzy galas. She kept in touch with Patricia from Tesla, who occasionally updated her on the ongoing investigations. Whether Jordan faced criminal charges depended on further evidence. But at least for Elizabeth, the immediate threat to her assets and well-being had lifted. David Hartridge reached out, once inviting Elizabeth to a dinner with the board, presumably to mend fences. Elizabeth politely declined. She had no desire to relive the tension of board meetings or navigate corporate politics, where her personal life became public fodder. She was grateful for Hartridge's stance, but preferred to build her future away from the chaos. In moments of solitude, Elizabeth reflected on the entire ordeal. She'd once believed that love, loyalty, and shared ambition could conquer anything. Yet she also realized that unchecked power and ego could corrode even the strongest of bonds. Jordan's betrayal had been a painful lesson, but it set her free to discover her own strengths and a life not tethered to someone else's rising star. Yes, heartbreak lingered, and healing was an ongoing process. But Elizabeth found herself waking each day with a sense of purpose. She'd gather with female founders at local co-working spaces, host workshops on media relations, and offer moral support to those feeling overshadowed by bigger players. Each time she saw a spark of confidence ignite in another woman's eyes, she felt her own sense of wholeness return. In time, Elizabeth would finalize the divorce, sign the deeds, and officially start over. A sense of calm settled within her, like the slow, tranquil waves on Lake Travis at dawn. Her story, the humiliating card cancellations, the public meltdown, the mistress's meddling, would become a cautionary tale, one she shared sparingly, only when it might help others. Despite the scars, Elizabeth refused to let bitterness define her. She chose growth empathy and a belief that with the right support, anyone can rise from the ashes more formidable than before. Just as Elizabeth thought she had reached stable ground, fate tossed her another curveball. A month after the settlement, Michelle called her urgently. "The feds want to depose you," she said. "They uncovered new evidence Jordan may be involved in deeper crimes, bribery, money laundering. Ava might have orchestrated a network." Elizabeth's stomach dropped. "Jordan never mentioned anything like that. They've found offshore transactions and documents with his signature," Michelle said grimly. 2 days later, Elizabeth sat in a stark federal office, flanked by Michelle and 2 serious agents. They questioned her about Jordan's finances, Ava's role, the card cancellations, and philanthropic events that may have masked backdoor deals. Elizabeth stuck to the facts. She neither speculated nor dramatized. One agent, impressed, said, "You've been very helpful, Ms. Alberts. This case is significant." She left emotionally drained but relieved. She hadn't been dragged down with Jordan, but the storm wasn't over. Whispers followed Jordan was hiding at a secluded ranch, dodging the press. Ava had vanished. More subpoenas were issued. An indictment loomed. Elizabeth stayed focused on her consultancy, channeling stress into helping other women navigate business pitfalls. Her story, once painful, became a symbol of warning and strength. Then came the headlines: Jordan Alberts indicted for insider trading fraud and obstruction. Ava was named but still missing. The scandal rocked the tech world. Elizabeth issued a single statement. "I'm saddened by Jordan's choices. I've cooperated fully with authorities and continue to rebuild my life." Eventually, Jordan pled guilty to a lesser charge, offering a tearful courtroom apology. Elizabeth watched from home, tears in her eyes, not from triumph, but quiet grief for the man she once loved. Still, she understood consequences had to follow actions. That night, beneath the soft moonlight over Lake Travis, Elizabeth allowed herself one last cry for the past that died and the hope still waiting ahead. Life has a way of testing our fortitude when we least expect it. Elizabeth Alberts began this journey as a devoted wife, only to see her world upended by betrayal and financial sabotage. Yet what she lost in illusions, she gained in unbreakable resilience. Standing up to powerful forces and calling out wrongdoing isn't easy, but it's sometimes the only way to protect your dignity and your future.